collagen stimulating injections like Sculptra or Radiesse, or does deeply delivered energy like FaceTite or Renuvion really make face nick lifting more difficult? And what does it actually look like on the inside? So first, I'm going to show you the inside of a face that has never had any of the above procedures done. She's had HA fillers, hyaluronic acid fillers, but she's never had a collagen stimulating filler injected. And you can see that the layers, as I separate the layers of the face in the deep plane, similar to turning the pages of a book made out of tracing paper, the pages come apart cleanly, they're smooth and they're shiny, you can see right through them, the pages have good integrity, and so when I build a new face out of this, I can preserve all the nerves, I can see everything I'm doing, I can push every boundary as far as I want to push it, and I'm building this new face out of excellent, high quality material that has not been injured just by the process of taking it apart. Contrast that to this face. This woman has had Sculptra, and many of you are going to say, well, how many times has she had it? And the answer is it really doesn't matter. And what we see here is lumps and bumps and dots of collagen, and they look like pebbles or they look like little popcorn pieces, but that is the collagen that you're hearing about. These are acting like spots of glue between the beautiful pages of tracing paper, of tissue paper in the book that I'm trying to separate.
Today, we're setting the record straight on Sculptra. Does Sculptra cause scar tissue? Can you get a facelift if you had Sculptra, or does Sculptra interfere or complicate a facelift? And does Sculptra stimulate fat? If you don't know me, I'm Emily Dowe, and I'm an aesthetic physician associate who's been doing Sculptra for over a decade. And I'm a big fan of it because it was a game changer for me. Another thing you should know is that I am not currently sponsored by any pharmaceutical company. I have no disclosures to make. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because there are injectors who sometimes do work for pharmaceutical companies that may want to paint the best possible picture of the products they represent. So I'm here to tell you the unbiased truth. One thing I will say in regards to these lumps, dots, or so-called collagen described as popcorn pieces, the company that makes Sculptra did address this video at a conference because this video went viral. And I do agree on a point, which is that in aesthetics, patients don't always know what's been injected into their skin. It could be Sculptra, but it could also be Bellafill, Radiesse, or even the effects of radiofrequency treatments or threads, unless the surgeon personally did the injections, which is unlikely because I believe this surgeon only does surgical procedures. There's no way to be completely sure that this was from Sculptra. Even as this Allure article put it, Sculptra is often not received in isolation, and laser and energy-based devices are commonly done in conjunction with Sculptra. So the question I get a lot is, does Sculptra cause scar tissue? Yes, technically it does to some extent, but not in a way that should concern you. So what qualifies as scar tissue? Tissue that's more fibrotic would be classified as scar tissue. Fibrosis just means that the body creates a little bit of a thicker, denser tissue. It's how your body naturally responds to injury or stimulation, by building stronger, more structured collagen in that area. And fibrosis doesn't mean that you're going to see anything to the surface of your skin. If anything, Sculptra improves the quality of your skin. It's actually known to give you a glow because it stimulates your skin to produce more collagen and elastin. But the collagen and elastin that forms can be more firm than your natural collagen. But keep in mind, your natural collagen and elastin is aging and it's changing to become weaker anyway. The skin in certain areas, especially the neck, becomes thinner and more crepey with age, and that's exactly why I decided to treat my neck with Sculptra. I had noticed that it was losing thickness and firmness over time, but here's the thing. I was warned that treating the neck with Sculptra carries a higher risk of nodules because the skin here is so much thinner than on the face. In areas like the face, chest, abdomen, knees, the butt, the skin is significantly denser and more forgiving, making nodule formation a lot less likely to form in these areas. But because I love Sculptra and because I'm a curious person, I thought, I'll take my chances. I figured if we hyper diluted it enough, we'd minimize the risk. But unfortunately, I did form fibrotic areas, and only I could see them, and only when I hyperextended my neck. No one else would have known that they were there. The good news is that they're gone now because we went in and broke up some of the fibrotic areas with the microcannula, and with more treatments to the neck, the skin thickened up to where it was no longer an issue. You're much more likely to form nodules in areas areas where the skin is extremely thin. We're talking paper thin. In these areas, you're more likely to see uneven areas of collagen growth. And this is why people say not to use Sculptra in the neck or the hands, because these are very paper thin areas compared to the face. In my case, they look more like small horizontal linear areas of firmer skin. I know I was warned and I took my chances. Some people have to find out the hard way. What can I say? It was in the name of science. But on a serious note, I treat many patients with Sculptra, and nodules are not an issue when I treat them because we're not treating areas like the neck, the hands, or the areas around the eyes. So going back to the question, yes, Sculptra can make your skin tissue more fibrotic underneath, but in places like the face, the butt, the knees, the upper inner arms, and the abs, this can be a good thing because it can help tighten the skin, which is why more recently, Sculptra received FDA approval for improving skin quality, firmness, and tightness in the areas of the cheeks, but you can apply this off-label in places like the abdomen or other areas of the body. So to answer your question, does Sculptra prevent you from getting a facelift or interfere with you getting a facelift?
So if you are asking me truthfully, is it more difficult to do a face neck lift in someone that's had these procedures done? The answer is yes, it absolutely can be. Can I get just as good of a job done? The answer is no. Sometimes I can't because the tissues themselves can't be as good when you finally separate those glued together sheets of tissue paper. The glue itself injures it. And sometimes you can't separate as far as you want to because it just can't sustain it. So you can't take the surgery as far as you wish you could because of the changes in the tissue. I hope that helps. It is not meant to scare anybody, but I believe that we should all know the consequences or the potential consequences of every decision we make.
You can still have a facelift. Obviously, the surgeon that posted the Instagram clip wouldn't be doing a facelift on the person he claims had Sculptra done if it couldn't be done. Does this mean that it's going to be more difficult for the surgeon to dissect the tissue? Yeah. Probably, if your results were still present, meaning the collagen you built from Sculptra was still around. This is why a lot of surgeons will tell patients to stop Sculptra or radiofrequency devices 1 year or 6 months before their facelift. And I'll commonly tell my patients that we should stop Sculptra a year or 6 months before a facelift based on what their plastic surgeon also recommends. And this usually isn't a problem because people who get facelifts usually have to plan their facelift by a minimum of 6 months. Most of them are usually planning 1 year before because facelifts require downtime. And if you're that worried about slightly more fibrotic skin and scar tissue from Sculptra, remember that a facelift is going to cause even more scar tissue than Sculptra probably ever could. I remember during my OB rotation scrubbing in on C-sections, you could always tell when a patient had previous surgeries. By their second or third C-section, it was much tougher for the surgeons to incise, separate, and work through the abdominal tissue. And that's because when tissue is surgically open, it has to heal. And it does that by laying down new collagen, but that collagen is different. It's denser, firmer, and more fibrotic than the body's original collagen. So Sculptra wouldn't likely give nearly as much fibrosis as you would get with a surgery. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because if you're worried about your skin getting more fibrotic from Sculptra and interfering with a facelift, you should know facelifts don't last forever. So what are you gonna do if you need another facelift? Do plastic surgeons say, we will only perform a facelift once? Let's say you're 45 when you get your first facelift, and then when you're 67, you want another one. Do you think plastic surgeons would say, no, I'm sorry, I can't perform a facelift because you already had one, and now there's too much scar tissue to work with? Another thing is that most people aren't getting Sculptra because they're bored. They're getting it because they don't wanna sit around and let their face go to year after year and wait around for a facelift. Most of the time, they're choosing biostimulators like Sculptra or Radiesse because they're trying to avoid needing a facelift in the first place.
Surgery, of course, carries even more risks than non-surgical treatments. I'm not trying to make it sound like surgery's risk-free, but I do want you to know about the possible positives and negatives that could come along with various types of non-surgical treatments.
And when I treat patients who have gotten facelifts with Sculptra, when I'm fanning this pre-auricular area with a needle, I can feel the fibrosis from their surgery because that's the area that they anchor or secure the skin to. And speaking of tissue changes, let's address more recent questions that I'm being asked about Sculptra or PLLA. I've heard that Sculptra could be promoting fat tissue. Have you heard about this? Is there a study? It would be awesome since I like Sculptra very much. Is there any truth that PLLA, otherwise known as Sculptra, could help restore facial fat? Fat has become more precious than ever. And this has been set off by the wave of people who have lost weight or are losing weight on Ozempic or other GLP-1 medications. So many people realized just how much facial fat was working in their favor to keep their skin plump, structured, and smooth. And losing fat in the face from weight loss made one thing clear: fat makes a major difference. Fat is the best natural volumizer for the face. It provides more volume than collagen and elastin. In addition, fat helps anchor the skin tissue by giving it shape, structure, and fullness. People who have lost weight are looking for ways to treat Ozempic face, which has created a major surge in business for aesthetic practices, and Sculptra has been riding that wave, growing rapidly. And just this month, it launched globally in new markets like China. Galderma, the company that makes Sculptra, is positioning itself as the go-to solution for this new wave of facial fat loss. But it raises a big question: does Sculptra really stimulate fat? When I have a question about a product, I go straight to the source. I reach out to the company's medical and science team to dig into their research, review their studies, and get a real answer. In this case, I wanted the facts. Does Sculptra stimulate adipogenesis, meaning the formation of new fat cells? So after speaking with Galderma's science team, I reviewed all of the studies they recommended, and I also did an independent search for any additional research on whether Sculptra stimulates fat cell growth or adipogenesis. So let's summarize those studies. In a 2023 in vitro UVB mouse adipocyte study, scientists took fat cells from a mouse cell line and irradiated the cells with UVB and then added Sculptra to the culture. The result was that they saw a boost in adipogenesis and a rise in collagen types 4 and 6. Type 4 and 6 collagens are crucial for fat tissue structure. In 2024, an RNA sequencing study explored what genes Sculptra turns on or upregulates in human skin. One standout finding: Sculptra influenced genes associated with adipocyte regulation, implying a broader regenerative potential beyond collagen stimulation. This is suggestive, but no direct proof of new fat. Plus, the study only went to the second layer of skin, the dermis. It didn't include the subcutaneous layer. So if anything, we're talking about dermal fat, not the deep layers of fat. In 2024, there was a hip-Dowe ultrasound study. This was one of the few human studies measuring actual fat. Ultrasound imaging of patients injected with Sculptra into the hip dip showed a measurable increase in the fat layer thickness over time. The thing to keep in mind here is that it showed the fat layer thicken, and the fat may have thickened from more collagen growing inside the fat layer, so this doesn't prove that actual fat growth or adipogenesis occurred. In 2024, there was a Sculptra mouse line study. This one threw a curveball. Researchers injected Sculptra into mice and saw that it decreased dermal fat thickness, not because it destroyed fat, but because it increased lipolysis and pushed cells towards beige fat, which burns more energy. They traced this effect to Sculptra's breakdown into lactate. So what does this mean? The evidence is strongest in vitro or in cell cultures and in animal models where conditions are controlled and mechanisms are easier to isolate and measure. And before you get too excited about what Sculptra or any other injectable does in a rat or mouse study, you should know that rodent fat is not the same as human fat. Rodents have a supercharged healing response and they regenerate very quickly. So just because it grew fat in a rat or mouse doesn't mean it'll do the same thing in a human. On Sculptra stimulating fat in the hip-Dowe ultrasound study, this study is suggestive, but it does not prove that Sculptra stimulates fat. The increased thickness could be from stimulating more collagen growth within the fat layer and not from new fat cell creation itself. This means that there is not a clear consensus on whether PLLA or Sculptra truly stimulates adipogenesis in humans. What these studies do tell us is that Sculptra can possibly stimulate the thin layer of dermal fat, what's known as our dermal adipocytes in our skin tissue, which could definitely improve skin quality and resilience. But here's the crucial part. This is key. This is probably not the kind of fat you're thinking of. When you think of fat loss from facial aging or Ozempic face, it's the deeper subcutaneous, superficial, and deep fat pads we spoke about in detail in this video that you're probably thinking of. The loss of these fat pads are responsible for things like hollow cheeks, bony temples, deep nasolabial folds, or smile lines. The biopsies from the gene study only went to the dermal layer. They even mentioned that was a limitation of their studies. Biopsies did not include the deep dermis and as a result did not include the subcutaneous fat. This is why I take marketing, media articles, and even some studies at face value. At this point in time, Sculptra is not exactly an alternative to something like a fat transfer or Renuva. I wouldn't be doing Renuva if I thought I could just use Sculptra to stimulate fat. So at this stage, Sculptra cannot say that they're FDA approved for adipogenesis or growing new fat cells. If they wanted to definitively prove that Sculptra stimulates adipogenesis, they'd need deeper biopsies from humans, including subcutaneous fat, and they need histology showing new adipocytes or fat cells that were formed. I have a practice that's heavily Sculptra based because I believe biostimulators are powerful for anti-aging. So if you want to learn more about Sculptra, be sure to check these videos out.